Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And it's time for yet another daily dose of Dismal Disney.
It is.
We're going to talk about dwarf actors and backlash toward Snow White and the seven
Magical creatures.
magical creature they-thems, or whatever the hell's going on here. We have a dwarf actor speaking out, and he calls himself a dwarf, so I can
Yes,
say that, right?
he says that flat out.
I'm
That's what
not
he
being
identifies.
offensive or anything. But he was on Piers Morgan.
Oh my gosh, if you haven't seen the video of it, go watch it.
Go watch the
It is
video.
gloriously hilarious.
We're not going to run the video during this
They get
video,
this guy who's like, personification of Twitter, to argue, the point about how Disney's on the right side of history doing this inclusivity thing, and then you have Dylan here and Piers Morgan, they're putting their opinion out there, which was it's subtractive, not additive.
Yeah.
And this guy just keeps losing it because they keep turning it back on him. He's like, and he even put this. He's like, I don't want to be canceled right now. And I was like, now you know what it feels like to be a normal person on social media when you say the sky's blue and then some activist is like, no, it's not. That's oppressive. It's gray because you're a bigoted, misogynistic troll bag and get offended by everything.
I have such a hard time believing these people exist in the real world, because I'm like, there's no way that you can navigate the real world and act like that.
Well,
You're a
this
cartoon.
person's like that. And then when they were giving it back to him, because he kept mentioning he was a gay man. We got it. Trust me, no one was questioning that the entire time. And then he kept saying it, and then he's like, your opinion, telling Dylan here, matters more than my opinion in this matter. But I just want to, but Piers Morgan's a bigot. And then it was the same talking points. Well, it was a cartoon. And we need to go back to it's like going back to the 1930s, and you do blackface and all that. And he's just like, dude. But they kept cornering him, and then when they did, he'd be like, well, I don't want to get canceled right now.
Yeah.
And like for this. And I'm like, well, there are other people, but yeah, here we are.
Yeah, go find the clip for context. But we're going to talk about this because this is the same guy who I think came out against Peter Dinklage last year, because Peter Dinklage complained on a podcast, which they think is what kicked off Disney deciding to not cast actual seven dwarf actors for the roles of dwarves. And he basically goes on and says, hey, there are very few roles for people of my stature, and we're super excited to get roles like this in movies, and you took them away. And it's not just Snow White, it's also the new Willy Wonka movie.
Yes.
The Oompa Loompas, to be politically correct, apparently they've decided they were going to use CGI and shrink Hugh Grant down to Oompa Loompa
But what
size.
they're doing is they're being subtractive, not additive. So you're just taking away roles from dwarf actors or people with dwarfism or whatever, and then giving it to these other people because they're diverse and inclusive. And again, there's a stupid idea for whatever reason that they keep running with, that they had to do this for inclusivity. And I'm like, why? Because dwarf actors aren't all white, straight, and male, and they can't wrap their head around this. Like, you can find dwarf actors in multiple colors and multiple genders or whatever, identities or whatever, however you want to identify, and they could have done that and still got the same inclusivity across and kept the rules with the people that were marginalized more than the other people. But they didn't.
All right, so let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. You'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Go out to piratesandprincesses.net for more objective Disney news. That's Kiki's blog. This is coming from the New York Post.
Yeah, it was funny because one thing that Piers Morgan was saying, and I don't know, make it clear, just because I agree with him on this thing doesn't mean I agree with him on everything. I have to make that clear because people don't seem to understand this. And this guy that was their guest, not Dylan here, but the other person doesn't understand this either. You can not agree with somebody, but when they're right, you can say, yeah, you're right. You can not like this person, but when they say something that's correct, you can say, yes, that's correct. Like the guy brought up the fact that what he thought Peter Dinklage was trying to say was that there should be roles for, people with dwarfism and similar conditions, all the time, and not just for these kind of things. And in that regard, I think that that's fair and probably true. But he's still a dumbass. But anyway, continue.
All right, so this actor and wrestler Dylan Postal, I think it's Dylan Postal, slammed the upcoming Wonka movie for casting Hugh Grant as Oompa Loompa rather than an actor with dwarfism. It's not just that. It was actually kind of segued into a whole conversation about, they call it Snow Woke and the seven magical creatures. The director used computer-generated imagery. I think it looks weird.
Yeah, it does look weird. gonna lie.
Speaking on Piers Morgan Uncensored, he said, so now we're not only using CGI and spending extra money and funding for these movies when we could just cast dwarves in that role.
It was interesting too. Dylan mentioned that beyond the regular screen actors, if they are showing actors in the picture that were stand-ins, the stand-in actors could have been hired that were also had dwarfism or something similar, and you would have had twice as many actors employed.
Yeah.
That were highly marginalized actors. And that was a very valid point, I thought. They also brought the fact that how come a person that gay people can only play gay actors and straight people can only play straight characters, and everybody has to identify the character you play, unless it's a dwarf.
Yeah, right.
And this guy, they were asking him, he's just like, on the 1930s.
Back at Piers, you sound like somebody from the 1930s. You know what I'm talking about. Do I have to mention the jack boots and the brown shirts? Do you know what I'm talking about, Piers?
It's just a cartoon.
It's just a stupid cartoon. It's like, then why are you here? Why does it matter to you so damn much if it's just a stupid cartoon?
That's what I was wondering. Why do you care?
That's always the go-to. Like, people get cornered on stuff. They argue. They get cornered. They're like, it's just a stupid game. It's just a stupid Star Wars. It's just a stupid.
It's the same deflective points that they keep hearing on Twitter. With this guy was just
He's
saying them all.
Twitter personified,
and then
right?
his face is getting red because he's getting mad. And I'm like, what did you think was going to happen?
So yeah, so this isn't actually. So even Piers Morgan's like, hey, shouldn't you let the actual dwarf actor speak to his situation instead of speaking for
his reality?
Yeah, speaking for his truth. Don't you need to hear his truth? You're taking at least one role or multiple roles away for Oompa Loompa characters, and also, the dwarves. They talked about that.
Dwarves.
He emphasized how those in the dwarf community aren't granted as many opportunities as they should be. These roles in Hollywood in general are very hard for people of my community to get, besides the elf and the leprechaun.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
Yeah, why are they being taken away from my community?
He brought up a point too. He said Dinklage making the comments about dwarves and stuff. He said he brought up the movie Elf, and he said he took the role as an elf. He knew the guy was going to mistake him for an elf. It was written for a person with dwarfism, and he had no problem taking it and cashing that check, did he?
Yeah.
And he brought that up, and he's not wrong.
Yeah. Of course, the director's like, hey, this is fantastic. Let's just, CGI the Oompa Loompas. Now, if they were going to go with the actual original book versions of the Oompa Loompas, the ones that were so dicey they had to change them, that would have been incredibly problematic. Yeah, so I agree with what he's saying. I agree with his points. I thought that person they had on Piers Morgan was just ridiculous, was a caricature. But he said, yeah, their roles are made for actors of my stature. I can't be Harrison Ford or George Clooney. I don't feel it's right that these roles got taken away from us.
And he even said, too, I understand that. He goes, I'm not offended by the fact that, there's all these other roles that I won't work for. He's like, I've come to accept it, basically is what he's saying.
Yeah.
But he's like, but when there are roles for us, and it's, normally it's something that we don't get a lot of roles to begin with, and then they have all these roles they could have done in both, Willy Wonka and Snow White, they took them all. Yeah,
because it's almost like they're afraid to acknowledge it, like, well, we don't want to stereotype the dwarf characters with the
but they weren't a stereotype. That's something else they brought up too. They said a negative interpretation. He goes, well, one, they did not live in a cave.
They lived in a very nice house.
They took care of Snow White. They were hard workers. They had money. They just didn't keep their house clean because they were busy working all the time.
They were rich bachelors.
But they were like loyal friends, and that was the point. They were loyal. They're like that's a real that's a good character to be equated to, and they're like because it's insensitive, and they're like, in what way? And they can't answer the question, and that's what they're mad about. Stop talking on about how we're being mistreated on our behalf because you just caused us damage. No. Because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Well, again, that dude that was on Piers Morgan, he is Twitter personified, and this is
Twitter. If Twitter was a person, it would be better if it was a woman and had blue hair, and that would have made it better.
But it was very much the way that Twitter acts and Twitter behaves, where they're going to be offended on behalf of other people, and then I've seen people get into fights with black friends of ours. White people get into fights with black friends of ours, trying to tell them what black people should think.
Oh yes, well, or like
it's like
woman,
what?
Like you're against strong female characters and everything else. I'm like, I'm a woman. That's not a strong female character. Well, if you don't agree, they ignore you and marginalize you twice. Or they call you an internalized whatever and to try to discredit you. So what if they're supporting strong women? Oh shit, I came across a strong woman who is going to fight me in my opinion because they don't agree with my opinion and they themselves identify as a strong woman. So my go-to is to, step over them or tell them they're actually a bigot so I don't have to listen to them. And then I can continue on my way. And usually it's a dude, by the way. So I can continue my way to, of mansplaining and thinking I'm better than women as I tell other men that they're misogynists. It's like, you the misogynist, not those other dudes. Thank you very much.
I'm getting to the point where I'm like, how many of these accounts are actually real? Like, I didn't think that these people could exist in the real world other than like Portland.
Sadly, they do, though.
I think they do.
It's just, I can't understand how they could function on a daily basis because literally everything in the day would be offensive. I mean, how do you live that way? I mean, like you're
online. You live online.
Everything. Nothing brings you joy, and that's sad.
God. So anyway, that is what's going on. So I think look,
We should get him to come on the show sometime.
Actually, we should. Dylan,
if you ever want to come on the show, let us.
Does anybody know this guy? I would like to because
you do the podcast and you let him talk the whole time about what he want to talk about.
Yeah, we actually we're looking into maybe getting into wrestling on the podcast. And he's a wrestler. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So hey Dylan, if you want to come on and talk, you get a hold of. Was it shout out at Clownfish?
Yeah, I'll talk to Dylan.
What's the address?
Shout out at clownfishtv.com.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go, Dylan.
Not that you'd probably waste your time with us because we're little.
Probably not. We're not exactly peers.
We're going to talk about wrestling too, so I'm not, but they are. So
I think it'd be
please,
cool.
by all means.
I'd love to hear his point of view. I would.
Well, it was very interesting watching it, especially this guy falling all over himself. And the thing is, the guy is trying to talk about how, Disney's doing fine, but he himself was being kind of like bigoted because he was like representation. But I'm like, what makes you think you can't have representation in the dwarfism community? That the whole idea that you're basically doing what you claim everybody else does to you, like you're all straight white men, take it all. I'm like, that doesn't necessarily mean the case. Yeah,
it's very. It's just a very weird situation where it just seems like certain groups it's
attractive.
You have to be part of that group if you want to get that role. Like, I don't think Will and Grace would happen now because the two male leads on the show were actually straight. Weren't they both of them? I think they're both straight guys.
I know the one
gay.
was. But I'm just like, and then I'm thinking about, you have Doogie Howser. What was his name again?
Oh, Neil Patrick Harris.
He plays straight dudes and womanizers all the damn time. And no one questions it. Dude's gay. No one cares. No one questions it. I mean, that's just it. That's called acting. Yeah, a lot of gay actors have come out and said they don't see a problem with people playing other roles, whether they're straight or gay or whatever, when they're not.
I think Ian McKellen, I think it's a generational thing because I think Ian McKellen said that too. And he was kind of like,
I saw another person recently, I forget who it was, that came out and said the same thing. And they're gay. And they're like, I don't see what the big point is. It's acting.
Yeah, it's acting. You're pretending to be somebody you're not. Now, where it gets dicey, of course, is if you're like stereotyping people, whatever, then.
But you know what the kicker is? They go on about stereotypes and they stereotype more than anyone. Yeah. Again, Frosta, Snake Eyes. Hollywood stereotypes more than anybody. And they yell about stereotyping all the damn time. We need to represent marginalized groups of people as long as you identify in these certain ways that the marginalized people we accept.
I wonder if the attitude is going to change, if they're going to stop trying to chase Twitter clout now that Twitter is problematic because Elon Musk owns it.
I don't know.
Like, we're not going to listen to these people anymore on Twitter because Twitter's awful.
But the point is, though, it's blowing up in their faces because the majority of people, like people in the middle, mainstream people, they all think you're full of shit. They all saw the Snow White and the Seven magical creature stuff, and they're like, what the hell is this?
It's like, come on.
Boards that are like notoriously like pixie dusting and, and even people on there are like, what the hell? It's like, what the hell is this?
This could have actually been a fantastic chance to highlight 7 dwarf actors and, maybe, because look at how, Peter Dinklage's career trajectory.
Well, he's trying to make sure he has some competition.
I don't know. I mean, again, it's like, what? Like, I mean, I get that there aren't that many roles, but still, I'm just like, you had a chance for 7 people. Maybe it was their first role ever.
Didn't he go on about like he was trying to break boundaries and make open doors for people and all this other stuff, and then he's shining them behind him?
That tends to happen in a lot of quote unquote communities. Is you basically kick the ladder.
I'm doing it for you, so you lift me up, and then after I'm up, I walk away and leave you down there.
Let me help you help me.
And then
Let
I
me
forget
step
about
on your
you.
heads as
Just
I
let me
climb
out,
to the
push me out. Okay, bye,
like
suckers.
self-help gurus and the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really matter, I guess, that they changed them to 7 magical creatures because Snow White's no longer white. So,
Why can't
don't
Snow
care
White
about-
have testicles?
there you go. White person, 7 testicles. The people are like even saying that. They're like, I am not white. And the one princess they should not have race bent was Snow White because it's literally her description. Skin as white as snow. They literally describe her that way.
No, now it's just irony. Like we used to call you Snow White, but for obvious reasons. you're
Squeaky
not.
was like, it was called. They're gonna change it now. It's gonna be like she's called Snow White because her teeth were as white as snow, or something like that.
in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, something
They had
stupid like that.
fantastic dental back then.
Because how they had explained why she got the name Snow White when they gave an explanation in the actual fairy tale, which was she had, hair was black as coal, lips, I forget what the color blood or whatever, and then skin white as snow.
Coke. She does coke. She snorts coke.
I
It's all over
know,
her
I'm
face.
Yeah, so I wiped it off and she,
She snorts
wasn't white as
coke with the
snow.
magical creatures.
I just
Actually,
want-
they don't exist. She just sees.
They're all magic. No, that would be much better. When they keep doing parodies,
Angel
like horror
dust.
parodies, that would be a horror movie parody.
God.
Turns out the magical creatures either aren't real, like Freddy Krueger, and they're killing people in their dreams. Anyway, we wrap this up.
We're wrapping this up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, quality content here on Clownfish TV. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Help support the channel. Go to thereef.support and get early access to podcasts, videos, and other content. That's thereef.support.